Hello! In this video, we're going to be talking about the simple present tense. This is going to be a review of the simple present tense. So I know that you've studied this verb tense before, probably a long time ago when you first started learning English, and today we're going to refresh your memory. In this lesson, it's going to be divided into two videos. The first video will talk about the uses of simple present. When do we use it? How do we know when to use the simple present? The second video, which will follow this video, will talk about the form of the simple present. So that means, how do we make it, right? The simple present is formed in different ways depending on the verb that we're using in the sentence. And then lastly, we're going to practice with the simple present so that you can feel confident using this verb tense on your own. Let's get started with the uses. The first thing to note is that the simple present is a really common verb tense. We use it a lot in speaking, and we also use it a lot in writing. The first reason we use simple present is to talk about facts or general truths. So these are things that are always true, right? For example, the sun is bright. It takes 8 minutes for light from the sun to reach the earth. And cats use their whiskers to feel the world around them. Now, you may or may not have known these things before, but because they're all facts or general truths, we use simple present to explain them. Another use of the simple present is to talk about habits and routines. In number 1, the New York City subway system runs 24 hours. This is a routine of the New York subway system because it's something that is done regularly, every day. In number 2, trains on the New York City subway system are usually crowded. We have this word usually. Usually tells how often something happens or how frequent it is. And when we see this word and the word in number 3, often, we know that these two are adverbs of frequency because they tell how frequent or how often something happens. So when we see an adverb of frequency, we know that's a habit. In number 2, this is a habit of the New York City subway system is it's usually crowded. And in number 3, this is the passenger's habit. They often complain, right? Do you know any other adverbs of frequency besides usually and often? I bet you do. Here's a list: always, sometimes, occasionally, rarely, and never, right? So if you see any of these words, they're all adverbs of frequency, therefore they're all habits, and so you'll know exactly what verb tense to use: simple present. The third and final reason we use simple present is to talk about a story, book, or poem. And this is a really useful one for students, especially college students. Because in our college classes, a lot of times we'll read something for the class, and the teacher will ask you to write a summary of that book, story, or poem. So you can know that you should not use past simple, but you should actually use present simple to tell the story or the book or the poem. For example, in chapter 9 of To Kill a Mockingbird, Atticus explains why he decides to defend Tom. Or number 2, this story is about a teenager who becomes a superhero. It doesn't matter if the book happened a long time ago or if the book was written a long time ago, we still use simple present to talk about the events in that book. Okay, here's a little bit of practice for you. I'm going to give you some sentences. All of the sentences use simple present in them. My question is, why did we use simple present for each sentence? So your answer could be because it's a fact or general truth, because it's a habit or routine, or because it explains about a book, story, or a poem. These are our 3 uses that we've talked about. Okay, so here are the sentences. Please pause the video while you read them and then write down your answers. Okay, I hope you paused your video and you wrote down your answers. I'm going to give you the answers now. Number 1 is a habit or routine. The key word here is usually. That's an adverb of frequency, right? Number 2 is a fact or general truth, right? It's a fact that Portuguese is the official language of Brazil. And number 3, pretty easy, is C, explain about a book, story, or poem. Here, we're clearly telling about the events of a book, so we use present simple many times to talk about the events of that book. All right, students, I hope that gave you a good idea of how we use simple present and when we use simple present so that you can decide in your writing which verb tense you should use. Next up, we're going to talk about how to make simple present. So please be sure to check out the next video to check out the form and also practice using the simple present too.